in like a solo kind of side of things, but it can apply to band stuff too. Um, but there's a really great session that Richard Parks did last year for the MWPBA that is sort of it's just so much gold in there about how to set up a band on the day, ahead of time, all that good stuff. So I'm not going to try to really touch on that. This is more sort of um, a little bit more on like getting your personal best rather than trying to get a group to peak at the right time. And I think the idea that I had when Jim asked me about this was, how can I put my best performance on the stage or on the field and not leave it in the practice room? How can I play to my peak potential, whatever that might be, right? How can I sound as good as I can and walk off being like, oh, I'm pretty happy with that. I didn't expect any miracles to happen. It's not like I just played it like so much better than I normally do, but I sort of hit that level that I know I can in a practice session. I want to try to hit that level on the stage. Um, and a lot of this is basically things I've learned the hard way from not doing that so well. So I guess I'll get going. I kind of think about competition preparation in some key categories here that I've color coded. So we've got the instrument, super important. That would include like the setup of the instrument, and it would do like kind of warm up time on the day, all that. And then we got technique. So that would be sort of just regular practice on the technique, doing exercises, that kind of thing. There's the musical prep that you've got to have. A lot of that would be, are you going to lessons regularly? Are you listening to recordings of other people? Are you recording yourself? Are you working with a metronome? And then mental prep. There's so many players, you all know players that, are really incredible players and no one's heard of them outside of your pipe band. Why? A lot of the times it comes down to this, is they sort of crumble under pressure, right? And so there's things that we can do to help our mental preparation, visualization or putting ourselves kind of in that place, making our practice sessions more intense so we're more used to pressure and intensity. Um, Testing our memory, putting our memory under pressure so that we can see if it kind of holds on the day. And then there's the stupid, kind of boring aspects of like just logistical preparation. But poor logistical preparation can mean a very stressful day. So I guess I throw that in there. So I'll just move on here to, I guess, the general practice routine. This is sort of months out, right? And everybody, this is what works for me. Okay. Some people, what works for them is they do the same thing all the time, or they pick all new solo tunes every year and then they work on those all year and then they get all new solo tunes, the next season or something like that. For me, it's a little bit more, you could say random. But there's sort of seasons of focus where I focus on some things and there would be times when I'm onboarding more tunes than others, but it's never just like in the fall. But yeah, we're all, I think, juggling like probably at least two performance avenues throughout the year, I would guess, right? Whether it's solos or band or playing gigs, you have to think about your bagpipe setup quite differently for that than you would a solo performance, solo contest performance. Maybe you got concert material, you're maybe into Cayley band, small pipes, maybe composing, arranging, whatever. Like there's so many different avenues that we can go with our music. And you likely can't do more than a couple of those at a time. So it's normal to have sort of seasons of focus where we focus on different things. And I think that's healthy. I think that like kind of breaks it up and keeps me able to like practice a lot, but I'm not getting burned out because I'll kind of put more time into the band or put more time into solos at different times of the year. And in general, variety is a good thing. Whether you're working out or you're practicing, these are things that like kind of from keep it from getting dull, keep you from plateauing, just kind of changing things up a lot. Practice repertoire versus competition repertoire. You're saying I practice things differently or different tunes than I compete with? A lot of times, yes, right? Because I want to play tunes that I can play like in my sleep, that are autopilot, that are automatic, um, and tunes that I'm almost bored with in a practice session. But the heightened kind of nervous energy of the contest actually gives them this kind of like spark and energy, as opposed to tunes that I'm like learning to stretch myself, right? Those are tunes that might take a year, might take a month, might take 2 years, might never get in to make the jump to the competition repertoire, but it keeps the practice exciting and engaging. And then at some point, I'm pivoting back to the competition repertoire, which is slowly evolving, but it's not like a total clean sweep every year, right? So that competition repertoire, I might pivot back to that like 2 weeks out from a contest, start hammering what I'm going to play in that contest. And then as soon as the contest is over, I might pivot back to some other new music that I'm working on. Um, for you, you just got to kind of gauge where that is. Do you need 2 weeks? Do you need a month? Whatever. But this is what's helpful for me to kind of keep it exciting and practicing things that are challenging, but still being realistic and how much time I need to kind of pivot back to the competition repertoire. Maybe if it's a really big event, like the contest in Scotland, maybe it's about 4 weeks or something like that. But I always find when I come back from Scotland, I'm like so ready for new music because I have spent longer just doing the same tunes. Um, yeah, actually, Alistair Gillis, I was lucky to have lessons with him for a while when I lived in Pittsburgh, went to Carnegie Mellon and stuff. And he told me that it was basically like 2 years that he'd work on a tune before he played it in a contest. That wasn't always the case, obviously, with set tunes. You're learning them in less than a year typically, but that was his ideal. It was like kind of learn a tune, and there's a long time before he would play it in a contest. We're talking, most successful competitive light music player of all time. So yeah, we need a long time to really make our tunes automatic. Um, Exercises. Okay, so this is something that I think is really good to have as part of your regular routine, right? So I would say like at least once a week, you should probably spend some time going through exercises. And I'd say there's like kind of maybe two types of exercises. There's like, well, learning exercises, like when you learn a new thing as a beginner. But then there's like kind of repair exercises where something gets bad, you fix it with an exercise, and then it's good to go. And then there's these exercises that maybe you have as regular maintenance. And so I've got a handful of these. When I stop playing bagpipes for 2 weeks, what would get worse? Like when I strike up the pipes, would my C doublings all of a sudden have gotten worse? Probably not. Two index fingers, kind of easy. But there are other embellishments that would deteriorate, that would feel sticky, right? And so those are things that I'm earmarking to say, okay, I'm going to play those regularly, even if I'm not having a problem with them. I'm going to do, say, my Kronloa exercises regularly because I don't want them to get soft. I don't want them to get weak. So have some maintenance exercises, things that are challenges for you. And those things are like you know, brushing your teeth. You just have to do it every day and there's no issues. Stop doing it for a while, you start having problems. Um, and when I do these exercises, I'm always kind of giving a little bit of a buffer for how it's going to sound in a contest. I would do that with tempo, and I would do that with my technique, playing just that little bit more heavy and deliberate and kind of spread than I might in a performance. There's a little bit of room for it to tighten up under pressure. I don't know about any of you, but like I've never walked off of a contest performance and thought, I think it was maybe too open there, right? It's always things tend to want to tighten up. Um, Daily practice. Okay. So yeah, I want to practice every day. Now, do I practice every day? No. But I do attempt to, and I find that the rest days, they're healthy, but they have a way in my schedule anyway of forcing their way in. And I don't really need to plan for the rest days. They sort of happen. If I plan for rest days and then they also force their way in, then I really haven't played a lot. But the bagpipe needs regular love, right? It needs regular moisture, and you as a player just need to get the time in, right? There's no one who's really good at an instrument that hasn't put in consistent daily practice for a long time. Let's see what else I got here. Okay, to more just general practice stuff. I want to enjoy it. Does that mean I enjoy it every day? No, but I remember how something makes me feel, and I either return to it eagerly if it makes me feel good, or if it doesn't, I avoid it. And I might avoid practice for a couple of days and then get back to it. But if it's continually not fun, I'm going to just slowly do it less and less. So I've got to find ways that I enjoy practicing. I look forward to it to a degree. There's a great line I heard someone say. It was like, gold medalists are made, are those who practice on the days that they didn't want to practice. And I like that line. It shows that you have to be dedicated, make a commitment, even when you're not feeling it. But in general, I would say good players also find ways to make them enjoy practice because you're spending a lot of time doing it. So you've got to practice in a way that makes you want to practice the next day. That bagpipe needs to woo you, not just on a Saturday when you've got nothing else going on, but when you come home from a hard day at work, you're tired, and it can't be another chore that you have to do. You have to be looking forward to playing that bagpipe. So try to find ways to make your practice rewarding. And that's you have to be a little creative about that, but just change practice so that you enjoy doing it. And try to practice. Dedication, I kind of already mentioned that. Like practice on the days you don't want to too. But see if you can change things so that you want to practice more. Even if you're sick, can you pick up the chanter and play 5 minutes of exercises? Whatever you can do, it's easier coming back from a break if you've kept it going. Prioritize. We always are thinking, what's the most important thing that I can do? If you want to prioritize, improve the worst thing first, right? This is usually the best bang for the buck. So I'm as a player, I'm kind of as good as my weakest aspect, right? And it can be easy to sort of ignore those things and keep working on the things I'm good at because I can still see how I'm improving the things I'm already good at. So I'm getting better. I feel like I'm making progress. I'm not spinning my wheels. But it's sort of like it doesn't really matter if I improve this, if I'm sort of ignoring this. That's still going to stick out in my performance. So try it sounds really negative, but it's sort of the easiest way to improve is find the things that you're worst at and put your time, maximize your time on those things. But if you're not sure, any improvement is improvement, and just try to make progress, any progress. Don't be stunned if you can't figure out exactly what you should prioritize. Just if you fix something every day, you're gonna get better. And this idea of frustration that I wrote down here, that's kind of tied in with enjoying it, but I think it's like deeper than that. Is I got to stop when I'm frustrated. I got to walk away from that thing that I'm working on that's frustrating me. And that sort of goes against what a lot of people think. Like I should have the willpower to just bash through it, keep going. But I think that's kind of negative in music, and I've been really guilty of that personally, and even with students, kind of like hammering something. Come on, let's just see it through. But what can happen when you start to get frustrated is you can start to get like these little mental windups. You can start to get tension, in a movement. And those are really difficult to undo, right? It's really difficult to walk that back because it's not really rational. You've got this sort of connection to, oh, here comes a D throw, and you tense up on it. It doesn't make it better. You know it. You can think, oh, don't tense up. Now you're still thinking every time you do a D throw, don't tense up. It's difficult to walk that stuff back. So if you can avoid getting frustrated, be aware of kind of your emotional state as you're practicing. I think that's really helpful. Um, it's what's the line? If it feels hard, you're not making small enough steps, right? So, and anytime I'm frustrated, I want to simplify it or just walk away, work on any number of other things, and then come back to it the next day. And then boredom, that's another good kind of like emotional indicator that you're ready to crank up the intensity, right? That you're ready for more. Or it shows you that that's a tune probably that will be perfect in a contest, right? Because you've got enough elevated nervous energy in a contest to make that tune that you're almost bored with really electric and exciting. What else do we have here? These are what I might call the difficulty control knobs, right? And this is I put down the responsive or inflexible. Are you creative and dynamic? Are you wooden and inflexible? Are you self-aware? Are you just, I'm going to play this 5 times every day, right? This is the kind of thing where I want to be responding all the time to what I'm doing and scaling up or scaling down. I want what I'm working on in the practice session to be like right on the edge of my comfort zone. So if I'm not focused at all, it falls apart. But if I am really focused, odds are I can achieve what I'm trying to do. I'm getting success. That's kind of playing in the zone, which is very rewarding. So these are just kind of obvious things that you'd know, but helpful to remind you. Maybe speed, slow it down, speed it up. Speed is sort of like an interesting one because sometimes we go, oh, I'll slow it down and then I'll add 2 beats a minute every day or something. But I usually don't find it works that way. Um, I think if you slow something down, drop it down 20 beats a minute, get it good, and probably in that same session, 5 minutes later, you could bump it up 10, bump it up another 10. You're right back where you were, and it's actually good. In general, you can ramp speed back up very quickly once you get it sorted at a slow speed. Um, Isolate things, right? How often have I had a student playing a tune that I know they've played 50, 100 times, and what is it like? Is the 301st time going to make the difference where it's all of a sudden better? No. Like isolate problems and kind of drill and kill these problems through isolation. Those are the main two kind of scaling aspects of difficulty, but we also have like bagpipe to the goose to the chanter. Shutting off your drones is really great for hearing technical things coming through that the drones kind of hide. Um, we love the drones. We love how they hide the odd technical thing, but shutting them off like really helps you hear some stuff, makes it a little easier to blow. And then you've got this kind of sheet music as another way to offload some mental energy for having to remember it and you can put more of that mental energy into whatever the problem is. Okay, there we go. Let me see here. Skip the slide. Okay, here we go. 80% is just to wake you up. Different slide. 80% of it is the bagpipe. A good performance. That's just a random number. It could be 60, it could be 90. The important thing is it is really important. You've got to have a good bagpipe. Um, you're just dead in the water before you begin if your bagpipe isn't good. Now it's relative, of course, to the grade and all that, and given the conditions and stuff. But you got to have a good bagpipe sound. That's what draws me in. That's what makes me want to listen. And it's really what makes it enjoyable as a player is when your bagpipe's great and you can kind of just focus on the music. Whenever the bagpipe's not there, there's usually musical issues to follow. So a lot of competition prep as we get closer to an event is just going to be really focused on the bagpipe. So yeah, it's important. Uh, I need to put the bagpipe first. So if I fire up the pipe and I'm like, oh, I've got this, bad tape sliding around, and I've got a drone that needs help. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna fix it right then and there. It's a little annoying. You feel like you just got in a groove to play, and now you're breaking it to do some maintenance. It's so important to do that stuff. And you sort of everything takes longer if the instrument isn't well maintained. If you don't have a good channel read, you're sorting out a new channel read. That could mean multiple days of not really playing much music. It could be going through reads and you finally think you got a good one and you play it for 3 days and then you realize it's got a couple little chirpy bits or it's gotten too easy or whatever it is, right? So it is frustrating to deal with that, or maybe you're calibrating your drum reads and you're trying to get them all to shut off at the same pressure. And every time you move the tenor to make it easier, it gets too easy and you just yo-yo a bunch. That's just sort of part of setting up your bagpipe. The more you do it, the less time it will take, the better and more intuitive it will become. But you've got to put the time in to get the bagpipe good, because everything is easier when once you get the bagpipe. And as I said here, lots of fussing to arrive at a no fuss setup. Once I get a good read, I've got the pipe settled, I've got the equipment that I like. My bagpipe is very low stress, very low maintenance. I can just fire it up every day. I'm hardly changing a single piece of tape. It's really good, but it takes a lot of fuss to get to that point. You just have to be willing to tinker and quote unquote waste a few days of practice. I got a story in my head of Don McPherson. He had this Living Legend album that he did. It came out probably about 20 years ago. And he was like 80 years old or so when he did this. And it was that Barnaby Brown had booked some studio time down in, I guess it was in Sardinia. And he'd gone down there and, he's playing Sheepskin and Cane and the whole deal. And day one in the studio, just fussed with the pipe. Day two in the studio, just messing with the bagpipe. Day three in the studio, more of the same. Day four, I think he finally got one pibroch in. And then day five, the last day of the studio booking, he just knocked out all the other pibroch that you hear on the album. And I remember that story, hearing that story, because it shows the importance of getting the bagpipe right. Um, get the bagpipe right and it's all easy. But it does take some time. We all pick the cantankerous instrument to play. It's not you, it's the pipe. What do I mean by that? If you're not like just getting going, then it's probably maybe you. But there's so many seasoned players where you're like, ooh, that F is a little touchy, but it's just me changing my pressure and I'll just make sure I really focus on it. Or that drone seems like it's pressure sensitive, but if I just blow right, it's okay. It's not you, it's the bagpipe. You should fix that. If your bagpipe's hard to tune, if it's hard to keep steady, it's the bagpipe. It's not you. Anytime that but it's really easy because it happens slowly over time, and you can start to think, oh, I can work my way around it. Too many times I have thought that I could work my way around it and could and manage things very well in practice. And then almost without fail in a contest, that thing happens. Wait, I chirped from high to low A? I really wasn't doing that at all. But I did know it was a thing. I didn't need to think about it. And in a contest, you don't want that. So I want sort of like an effortless instrument. How do I get there? It's just a lot of work. Go in and focus on the pipe. And like I said, once you get it, it makes it so many things easy and you don't have to keep fussing. Backup channers. That was a game changer for me when I started to have more than one channer. So it gives you a lot of confidence in fussing with your sound, where you're not necessarily messing up your really good channer 3 days out from a contest, but you're sort of playing one channer against the next, right? And ideally, you're like, what channer should I play? I'm not sure. There are both of them, or maybe you have even more than two if you're neurotic like me. Which one's the best? It just gives you a lot of confidence. It's totally worth buying at least a second channer, even if it's just a plastic channer, just to get other reads going and to sort of, like I said, pit one channer against the next. Gives you a lot more confidence and ability to make some aggressive changes. And then experiment. This is more something that I would do in the off season, if we even have an off season anymore. But this is where I would be trying new things, right? I would try new bags, maybe you're on synthetic and you want to try a sheep, or you want to try a Lee bag with a sheep and tubes, or you want to try different drone reeds, maybe a different bag, but whatever your time and budget allows, I would I would put time into experimenting. And you might find I love what I've been doing. It's way better than these other options. And then great, you've got more confidence in what you're doing. But I do think there are a lot of good options, and I think that you want to find out what works for you. You know, the setup that for you, you can get the most stable sound easily. So that was important. Now, 1 week out from a contest, um, this is sort of the point where I want a lot of things kind of ticking along. I've maybe pivoted back to some of my sort of core competition tunes, which maybe are just a little more automatic than some tunes that I've been working on, in my practice sessions. I can cram like memorization. I can cram for a test. I can kind of do some last minute stuff like that, but you really can't do any last minute technical big technical gains or stamina gains. Maybe I could work on my technique, really focus on opening it up or keeping it loose. I could be mindful of that. Um, but in general, my technique is going to be my technique a week out. My stamina is going to be my stamina. And I could certainly make it worse by practicing a ton the week of a contest. I could certainly tire myself out. So I kind of want to peak at the right time. So maybe a week out, I'm deloading. I'm just not having any marathon sessions. Um, Typically the day before for me, I'm not going to have a huge session on the pipes, just enough to get the bagpipe to peak, and then I'll set them down. It's not really practice. It's more just kind of putting the instrument through its paces. For some people, that might be 2 days before or something, but usually for me, it would just end up being the day before, because often that day is kind of crammed with travel and stuff anyway, and it might be hard to find practice time the day before. So that's a nice kind of basically like a rest day or a light day. Um, yeah. Maintenance. What am I gonna do a week out? If I'm playing a sheepskin, I'm gonna check if my bag needs seasoning. I want to season it a week out, ideally. I don't want to be seasoning it the night before and really changing the moisture level inside the bag. Um, if you play desiccant beads in your drones and stuff like that, I'd make sure that those are prepped, right? For me, what I do if I'm playing beads is I like to have them dry, and then I like to have like a half-hour session on them. And then it's ideal for like a contest. I don't like to put the totally fresh beads in my bag, or I find my channers kind of peaky, kind of sharp for the first little while. So I find my bag grip settles a little quicker if they're slightly used beads that still have a lot of time left on them. So I would be thinking about that. I'd make sure, okay, I've dried my beads and I've maybe done a pre-play on a few different canisters, or if you're playing the tubes, I've pre-played them. That's what I would try to do. I'd go through my backup channels, just make sure everything is sounding good through this week. I'd be making recordings. This is something you can always do. Um, and I do it periodically. I definitely do it a little more as I get close, just to kind of catch some problems. So the more you make recordings, I think the better you get at actually hearing things as they are. So the first time you make a recording to listen back, you're like, wait, I sound like that. And then I think over time you do get better at sort of hearing yourself as you actually sound. But recordings are so helpful for just catching stuff like, um, are you actually playing the tempo you think you are? Um, and the challenge with the recordings is it takes doubles your practice time, or at least lengthens it, because you have to listen to it. But if you can go for a walk and listen to at least some sections of your practice, I find that's very, very helpful, and helps get your head in the game as you approach things a week out. Um, every practice, this is something I'm doing all the time, but especially kind of a week out, is I am trying to get my bagpipe to be rock solid through a P rock, right? So I I'm playing repertoire, but there's a larger goal to the practice session, which is like practicing the whole warm-up procedure. So I want to know like how long does it take for my bagpipe to lock? Recordings are actually really useful for this because then you don't have to sit there with a stopwatch. You can kind of go back and be like, oh yeah, I remember at this point in my practice, that's when it felt good, and just see the timestamp on the recording. But I want to, sometimes I call it like the warm-up liturgy, right? So I might play a different 6/8 march at the beginning. I might play a different MSR and then a different double MSR and then a different P-block, but I'm kind of maybe following a similar thing so that I can repeat it on the day. So I'm getting through repertoire, but the real focus is how long do I need to play before my bagpipe's going to be rock solid through a P-block, and then ideally, can I play a second P-block without messing with it? That's the real test, or with maybe just a very minor adjustment. I always want in my practice session to be like have that buffer room, so I can play a lot longer than I'm going to need to on the day. If you're up against the ropes in your performance, you're tense, right? Your hands are tense because you're working hard. You won't play your best. You've got to feel comfortable, and I want to feel like I can walk off the stage and then just play another P-block in the tuning room afterwards. Actually, you can do that sometimes if there's not anyone after you. It's good practice to remind yourself that actually you can do that. You felt real tired and you didn't want to look at your bagpipe, but you could play another tune. What's the line? It's like something like you think you're tired, your brain gets like tells your body you're tired, and well before your muscles give out, right? So that you're maybe only at 40%. You can go a lot longer. So it's good a reminder to yourself that you can do that. But I just want to be relaxed. I want to have a lot of like a half tank left when I'm done performing. How do we do that? Sometimes on a contest day, say you're playing an outdoor contest and you're playing 4 events, and each event has like they're all spread out. So you have to like warm up your pipe for 10 minutes minimum before each one. Then you've got a band contest in the afternoon. You might be playing your pipes for close to 2 hours on that day. How do you prepare for that? Do you have to play 2 hours a night? Like that's kind of crazy. Um, but if you just can play, one of the things that you can do to maximize your stamina work and not have to practice for 2 hours is just don't touch your bagpipe. Don't push it up after you strike in. Don't stop. Right? Anytime you stop, that makes it much easier. And that's a great thing to remind yourself of on the day. I'm getting ahead of myself here, I guess, but on the day, it's great to do those little like 5-second stops and then strike in again and play. It makes it surprisingly way easier. And it doesn't change like the warm up. It doesn't like really take that time out from the warm up, but it does make it easier. So you can do the opposite of that and try to have a session where you're just not even pushing your bag up under your arm. That will be a half hour's practice that will probably have the stamina intensity of, hour and a half off and on or something. But yeah, 1 week out, the main focus is the bagpipe. I'm not really changing the tunes much at this point. So the day before, this is where I would try to get on location. If I can't go to the contest park or something like that, I'm still going to be playing, with maybe aware of the temperature, but the altitude, I'm getting used to that. That's actually a surprisingly big thing. I live in Houston, where we're all of 70 feet of elevation. So almost anywhere I go, I notice a little elevation. But certainly when it gets to about 1,000 feet, I notice, my top end being a little sharper. And so that's just something I know I can adjust the day before. And it gives me confidence on the day that I'm just warming up my bagpipe. I'm not kind of trying to find where it wants to be. And if it's higher elevation, I've got to do even more. You might find this with dryness. Anyone who's played at Winter Storm knows it's like the driest place on earth. And you got to figure out what you need to do with your bagpipe to make that change. A lot of times I would, maybe if my top hand's a bit sharper than normal, I might do a combo of sharpen my low A, move the tape up on the low A while I also raise the reed. A likely I'm at the exact same pitch that I was at, but now I've flattened that top hand. Just knowing your pipe and knowing what it might do is really helpful. So if I know I'm going to play at Grandfather Mountain Highland Games at 5,000 feet or whatever it is, I know my top hand's going to go sharp. I don't want my pipe at sea level to have much tape on the top hand. If I've got a bunch of tape on the top hand and then I go to elevation, now I've got to move even more tape. Maybe I'll have to back the readout, but I have to do a lot more work. I want to have wiggle room. So I'm just thinking about if it's a cold day, same thing, right? I'm going to want to have that room to add tape on the top hand because the top hand often gets quite sharp, or I'm going to have room to bring tape up on the bottom hand. That would work too. Anyway, so I'm sort of aware of where I'm going, and I'm trying to get a play the day before to get the bagpipe good. I'm going to play for maybe about 20 minutes, kind of like what I would do leading up to maybe starting my big P-Rick play or something like that, right? And then I'll shut it down. But I'll get the pipe good. So then the next day, if I fire it up or whatever, it doesn't sound good right away, I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to play 10, 15 minutes and see if it comes in. Hopefully it will if it did the day before. I'm going to, let's see, I already mentioned the pre-play on the beads, but I'm going to do that. Make sure that my beads are good so that the next day I'm not too dry when I start. It's kind of some boring logistic stuff, I'm gonna eat a big meal. I'm gonna try to get to bed early. I'm gonna sort my uniform out, right? I'm gonna shine my shoes. I don't want to do that in the day, pants hands, black under the fingernails. Not gonna do that. I'm gonna do that the day before. Sort that. Iron the shirt, that sort of stuff. And those are actually kind of nice things to do to take your mind off of what you're doing, to kind of help you relax almost. Because there's not a lot you can do to change things. At this point, it's just kind of staying relaxed and chill. The work is done. And then on the day, I like to do some venue recon, right? So what am I doing? If it's outside, I'm seeing where the judge is. Is it in the sun? Is it in the shade? If it's inside, I'm gonna go into the room, right? So there's no surprises when I walk in later. I'm going to, if I'm not playing in the first three players or so, I'm going to sneak in and have a listen in the room. Some people never do this. It like gets them too nervous or they overthink or whatever. For me, it's really helpful because then in the tuning room, I can visualize myself in that room. I can see where the judges are, who the judges are, if there's a tuning clock or not. There's a lot of things that I can sort of pre-process so that when I go out there onto the stage, I can focus on tuning up. I'm not focusing on all this. I'm not taking in these other things and processing them for the first time. I've already kind of done that. Some people don't look at the audience at all when they play. Man, I've done that, and that works until you do see someone in the audience, and all of a sudden you're surprised in the middle of your first play. So for me, I actually do like to look around and see who's there as I'm tuning up, just so there's no surprises in the performance. That's the main thing. I like to pre-process things so that I can have as much mental space to focus on the music. You probably all know some of the absurd things that we think about in the middle of a performance. And we're trying to avoid that, trying to clear our mind so that we can focus on the music. The mental focus aspect, this is like huge. A lot of the, being mentally focused is just being confident in your preparation. But sometimes, it's the contest day. I forget my P rock. Is there a grace note on that connecting note or not? We can easily overthink things, and what do they say? The amount that the brain can really focus on something, like really focus in, it's probably only about 3 to 4 hours a day. So like, I don't actually need to really overthink things on the day if I've prepared well. I can just wait till I start. The warm up will be enough time to get my head in the game and focus. And so I'm not doing things to stress or distract me, but I'm not really trying to overthink my tunes or go through all the tunes ahead of time. I've tried doing that. It doesn't usually help. And sometimes I'm just mentally tired then before I start. So I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to be pretty chill leading up to when I actually have to get the pipes out and start doing work. Um, what do I say? Arrive early. If you're like not a morning person like me and you like maybe find yourself always a little late to everything, this is for you. This is for me. Um, 20 minutes more of sleep will not make a difference for me, really. But 20 minutes more prep on the day can make me so much more relaxed. So it's just kind of that. I need to always remind myself arrive a little earlier than I think. Appetite nutrition. This is kind of silly stuff. It's just stuff that you have to figure out for you. For me, I can't have like 2 cups of coffee and then play nice and relaxed. Right? My tempos are going to be really high. I like a little caffeine if it's playing in the morning, but um, I'm gonna kind of deload the caffeine maybe on the contest day. Already enough energy. Um, I don't need to add to that. Sometimes, people like a big giant meal for breakfast or whatever. For me, on a contest day, often I find I'm not super hungry, so I need things that I know I'm going to eat. It could just be junk food. It could be gummy bears, something stupid that you never eat, but then like it's easy source of quick calories if you don't have a big appetite. Things like that can be pretty helpful on a long day, um, outdoor games or something like that. Um, Electrolyte in your water, whatever. Just, you know, athletes think about all these things. And as a piper, on the day, playing at the Chicago games or something like that, you almost need to think about your nutrition in a way of like an athlete um, preparing for that. So anyway, moving on to nerves. This is a big thing um, that plagues many of us. Yeah, I'd say it's a constant pressure. At some point I thought the nerves would go away. You just get to be a good enough player and you wouldn't be nervous anymore. Um, but what I've found is that as you get better, you just that the stakes keep getting higher. You play in bigger contests, you play in front of more people, or people expect more of you. So that typically I found that the nerves kind of just they don't go away as long as you're pushing yourself to be better. You, but you do get better at being like, okay, I'm nervous. That's cool. That can make those tunes that are a little dull in practice much better in a contest. You can learn to play really well despite the nerves and not that let them destabilize you. So I don't think they're a bad thing, and you can embrace that. Things that you can do to mitigate a sudden jump up of nerves. That's what we kind of don't want. Is we want maybe a little turning of the screw, but not a lot. Would be visualizing judges ahead of time. You could in your practice venue, you could imagine there's the judges, and especially if they've announced the judges ahead of time, you can actually think of those faces, sitting at that table next to the wall. I'm not setting up mannequins. I have heard of a pretty well-known piper that did something like that, but just visualizing it is pretty helpful. You can visualize the performance venue. If you've played at Winter Storm before, for example, you can imagine that exact room. Likely it's going to be there. You can actually imagine yourself playing there. It just elevates your practice a little bit. Recording can do the same thing. I'm going to get a perfect run. And you set the recorder, and all of a sudden you start making silly mistakes. Finding ways to make your practice a little bit more intense, right, is really helpful. And we're trying to make the performance a little more chill, like I mentioned a couple of things, like getting in the venue ahead of time and stuff. But I'm also trying to make my practice a little more intense so that there's less of a jump up on the day. I can send tunes to my friends to listen to. I could play in a lesson. Playing in a lesson is definitely a step up from just playing for myself. Even just playing outside where people can hear you, you're a little more self-aware of things. These tunes that I've said, okay, I'm going to play in 2 years from now. I'm going to test them all along the way. Maybe I'll play them at a gig, low pressure, see if it goes okay. If it goes just fine, maybe I'll play it in a small contest, see how that goes. And then you build confidence. Oh, I got it through it. I got good comments on it. I'm going to put that in at a bigger event. And so you could sort of phase things in. You're sort of stress testing them as you go. Um, just this level of preparation, you can have confidence in your preparation. You can say, I've done everything, and that gives me confidence to play well. Just things like deep breathing, it seems simple, it seems almost too silly to do. It doesn't take any time. You can literally, if you find yourself getting worked up, just take some deep breaths in, hold it, take some deep breaths out, slow breaths out. Like it actually does help a little bit, right? For me, not too much caffeine. Sheet music, I like to have the sheet music ready because it's really easy to overthink tunes. These tunes that have been autopilot and automatic for months, um, you've been reinforcing, every time you do it, your muscle memory is etched deeper, your auditory memory of the tune is etched deeper. I always think you have like a structural memory of the tune, first part, repeat, second part, repeat, whatever. That's kind of reinforced. And what's gotten weaker, what the battery that has gotten drained is your visual memory of the tune. And so having some sheet music handy of your music is really, really good because when you start overthinking things, you realize like I said, what's the grace note on that connecting note and that variation in your PRIC? You can just look real quickly and not overthink, not make a mistake 5 times trying to figure out what it is. This is a funny one because you would think that at the very highest level, pipers have their music memorized. And yet, in the clasp, you get an insight at these big contests into what the best pipers are doing because you're sharing a tuning room with them. I'm going into the final tuning room after, you know, maybe the best player in the world. And what do I invariably see? The Kilberry bucket open, or photocopy of the Peaver Society open. Like I see whoever I go in after, almost always they've got the sheet music of the tune that they got picked for that contest. And it's just, again, it helps get rid of a little nervous energy, just knowing you have it there. Not that they're reading off of it, but it's there. It's just an element of preparation that I think is really useful because of some of the tricks our brain plays, when we start overthinking things. And then frequency, what I mean by that is just frequency of competing, getting out in public, whatever. If I go and compete once or twice a year, I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to do well at those. If I'm going out, every month or more, I've got a lot of chances to redeem myself. I'm not putting too much pressure on a given event. Tuning, this is huge. This is kind of an on the day thing. You've got to figure out what it is for you. I need to have a good sound out of the box though, right? So that's that kind of, I've played the day before. I've really worked on it all week, if not every time I play ever, right? So I want to make sure that quickly my sound out of the box is good. It's very, very stressful if your sound is not good and you're waiting for it to come in. Sometimes I've had a read where like the high G takes like almost 20 minutes to come down. And then it does, and it's rock solid and all that. But it can be a little stressful for those 20 minutes waiting for it to come down. Is it going to come down? And so in general, now I just kind of avoid those reads. I want a read that gives me consistent sound pretty quickly out of the box where I'm not worried about if a certain note is ever going to find its way back down. How long to tune this is very dependent on you, on your instrument. As a default suggestion, what I would say is when you get to the venue, if it's an outdoor venue, just throw your pipe together, have a quick tune, remind yourself you have everything works, the instrument sounds half decent, just put it down. And then when you actually start your ramp up, for me, it often would be like maybe 3 people out for light music or 2 out for Pibroch, is I would get the pipe out and have a quick blow and then just kind of off and on. And then always the person before you playing, whether it's light music or Pibroch, I would try to be playing the whole time pretty much during that to get the pipe settled. But you got to figure out what that is for you. And outdoors, maybe you need a little less time. If it's a hot day, it doesn't take long for your instrument to come up to pitch. If it's a cold day, it would take longer. Indoors, you've got more things to think about. Maybe rooms being slightly different temperature or whatever. So indoor contest, I would be much more likely to kind of play in front of the judge for like 4 minutes to really make sure my pipe's acclimated to that room before I start. Whereas an outdoor contest, maybe for PEEB I would, but typically for a light music contest, say you play a hornpipe jig, it's 2.5 minutes. How long do you actually have to tune in front of the judge? You've gone from somewhere, 100 feet away. It's the same climate. So often it would just be strike up the pipe, maybe play a tuning phrase for 20 seconds until they come right back to pitch and then just play. So I'm not necessarily going to warm up in front of the judge a lot if it's out an outdoor contest. But you need to, I guess what I'm saying is you need to consider that as part of your warm up. So if your bagpipe regularly takes a half hour to play, maybe in an indoor contest, you only need 25 minutes in the tuning room because you're going to have another 5 minutes out there on the stage. And then for what am I going to play? What is my warm up tune? It helps to have a couple options maybe, depending on like kind of what key the tune is in that you're about to play. I kind of would like to have a tune that hits those notes, right? So P-Rock, especially since so many of our tunes are, pentatonic, hexatonic, whatever, they're gap scales. I would want to have a similar variation that I would warm up with that would have those same intervals on the chanter. So a high G tune, I'm going to want to have a high G variation, right? What am I going to play? Something that's not the ground and something that's not Tarlo, Crunlo, like those kind of middle variations, G-ish, Jewel, that type of thing. And it could play slower, something like that too. That works as well. Personally, what I do is I do like a P-Rock variation for P-Rock, and then for light music, I would either do P-Rock variation or I would do a slow air. But I'm worried about like how long the warm-up tune is. I've thought about that, right? I kind of like a tune that's about 2.5 minutes. And so then that gives me sort of, 30 seconds to get the pipe locked in. Now I'm at 3 minutes. A lot of tuning clocks are about 4 minutes. And so now I've got like a minute buffer if things aren't quite right to make another adjustment, or I can just kind of go for it. The initial impact is so important. I want my bagpipe to be good when I strike it up. That's the first impression you make. And an outdoor contest, how many times have you been like, oh, I'll get the pipe perfect, in front of the judge. And then you go over and you strike up and you realize like there's somebody on that platform there and someone over there and you can't even hear your bagpipe. Odds are the judge can't either, but it's stressful. I don't want to try to be making fine adjustments on stage. My ideal situation is I could walk up, play, not touch the instrument. And I want the instrument to be that good when I strike up. Again, it creates the expectation that this is going to be a good performance. I think it makes not that the judge is ever rooting against you, but I really think it makes the judge or the listener excited and like really hopeful that this is going to be a great performance if you strike up and have a great bagpipe. So get your bagpipe really good before you walk out. And then after, I want to think about my performance after I walk off. Sometimes it's the last thing I want to think about, but I want to have a little post-mortem at some point. I am so much more hyper-focused in a performance. Now I try to be more focused in a practice, whatever, but I'm still more focused in a performance. I remember like these little details. That's actually great feedback that you can give yourself. You are more aware of things when you walk off the contest than you were before. And it can bring certain things into awareness that you weren't quite sure about. Like, this is the read. This is awesome. This is the setup. It was rock solid. Didn't have to think about it. Or thought it was good, but it's definitely not the read. I want to smash it right now. It just brings things into kind of more black and white relief. I want to think about my personal feelings before the result comes out. For me, what I always tell students, what I think about is like, if I can just get through my tunes, not going off them, not doing anything stupid, no breakdowns, that's like a pretty good play. I want to sort of hit my practice average. If I can do that, again, I'm not hoping for miracles. I'm just hoping to go out there and play what my sort of average is and maybe even what my peak is, but I'm not hoping for miracles. if I can do that, regardless of the result, I want to take that pre-result assessment and be like, I was pretty happy with that. Today was a success. Or if not, I want to be, I want to kind of make note of that as well. Because a lot of times a result could come out and you hated the tune that you played and you got in the list. And pretty quickly you start thinking, oh, it's a pretty good day. Or vice versa. You're pretty happy with how you played. And then, you didn't get a result and you start thinking badly about it. So I think that's helpful. And then you want to look back on your sheets, your comments, see if you can take anything from that. And then just generally thinking like what went well, what needs to change. Um, and just like a lesson, like I always try to, like after a lesson, if you can do it the same day, great, or the next day, but practice the things that you talked about in a lesson as a way of reinforcing it. I would also try to, as soon as you can, maybe it's not the next day, but maybe on the Monday, you try to play through these things that you kind of noticed on the contest day. Okay. So I've got a classic quote here. Maybe it's John Wooden. Maybe it's Ben Franklin. I don't know. It's a good quote. You got to put the prep in to see the results. And I think the idea with putting the prep in is that it allows you to play at your peak potential. It allows you to sound as good as you can. People are hearing the best side of you. You're flattering yourself out there rather than exposing weaknesses. You're putting your best effort out there, leaving it on the platform. Thanks for listening to my spiel. We're right about an hour in, so figure we'll go to any questions. Love to hear some questions and or some some things that you could add. And yeah, take it away.
Nick, thanks a lot. That was some great advice there. And if everyone um, just takes that advice and puts it into practice, I think we'll have many, many, many better players this year than we had last year. So if anyone has any questions, Lou, you have your hand raised there. Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear?
Yep,
Can you
I hear you, Lou.
Can't hear you, Lou. You're
Hey,
muted. There you go.
yes, thanks for letting me ask a question. You talk about focus. Is focus something that you can train for, like other things in piping or life, or is it just an abstract thing that we say, well, you have to focus? Is there anything that you can do to actually get better at it?
I think 100% you can get better at it. And I would argue that that's the aspect of music learning and, just something that we get from music that will help like every area of your life. Is if you can be more focused, more in the moment, more present, that really makes everything better, whether it's a social scenario or work or whatever it is. And I think you get better at it by doing it more. So I can show up at band practice and I can kind of be checked out and I can get through the tunes and I might not be as good as I possibly could, but someone else is worse. I'm not dragging the band down and I can get through band practice that way. And who do I hurt? I hurt me, right? Like if I don't bring my A game all the time, try to be fully present, fully aware, um, I'm missing out on this chance. I'm already there with my body. I might as well be there with my mind, but I'm missing out on a chance to practice that, what you're talking about, that focus. Um, I think that anytime you pick up your bagpipe, it's really easy to have extended parts of a practice session where you're kind of not super focused and you have to just kind of keep bringing your brain back in to the moment. And the more you do that, I 100% think that it will help. You get better at doing that. You get better at like really focusing in on the present. There's a lot of little strategies, sometimes people say, look at something in the room. So it's something concrete and in the moment, even if it's not the next measure of music, I'm looking at that stool over there and I'm brought back into the present moment. There's tons of techniques, but it definitely helps. It definitely helps. One thing that can be helpful, I mentioned recordings. It can be really helpful as far as the focus goes, because what do you do when you're practicing? You're always analyzing what you're doing. You're looking kind of backwards and forwards, right? I need to know what the next measure I'm playing is, but I'm sort of thinking, did I like what I just did, or do I want to circle back and fix it, or do I want to fix it tomorrow? So I'm always kind of backwards looking, and that's the worst thing you could do in a performance, right? I want to forget what just happened, focus on what's happening in front of me. A recording can help you do that. You can sort of practice performing in a practice session. If I sort of ignored what I was doing in the practice session without recording it, I could get better at maybe performing, but over time, I'm going to have like kind of worse practice sessions because I'm less focused on what I can do differently. Um, but I can record myself and then take off my kind of performing hat and put on my listening hat, my critical thinking hat afterwards, and sort of analyze the performance that way. That would be a way that you could maybe practice that kind of being in the moment and performing. But a lot of it's just quieting all the dumb things that go on in our heads when we are performing. You know, you're thinking about what's the judge writing, or what did they think about my playing the last time I played for them? Or, oh, I see that person over there. I got to go talk to them later. There's so many things going on in your head uh, that you're trying to like sort of push out and focus in on the thing you're doing. I think I was mentioning like the type of music that you're playing. I think it's easier to do that type of thing when you've got a really good grasp on the music. If you feel like you're a little on edge with the music, it's much easier for those when you lose focus for it to derail what you're doing. So yeah, focus is something that I would try to practice. If you're there with your body, try to be all in with your mind. It is actually not really easy, and it's something you could probably practice all the time. I mentioned you can do what about 3 or 4 hours of properly focused stuff a day. Um, you can train that, but at a certain point, yeah, you're not going to be focused. So I want to save that time, some of that time left over for my practicing anyway.
Thank you.
Ian McKee, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can hear you fine.
All right. Hey, Nick. I've gotten to hear you a couple times in an indoor setting recently, and something that struck me is your drone sound is unique and really, really good, and I quite enjoyed it. And I was wondering, hopefully this is within the scope, but could you give us some insights into your setup and how you arrived at it? I know it's not going to be universal for everybody, but trying to improve that sound, how do you go about it?
Sure. So like I've kind of tried probably most setups. Um, I have, I'm just gonna leave this over here. I've tried most setups probably over the years, and I've arrived at what I have now mainly because of Scotland, mainly because of playing in Scotland. So if I wasn't going to compete in Scotland, I might not play what I'm playing now. But what I've arrived at is sort of having played sheepskin for a long time, and then well, playing first starting with synthetic, then discovering sheepskin, loving it, and then playing it in Scotland and having my bass drum shut off the cowl, you know, then being like, okay, I need moisture control, then going the full on synthetic route. I've kind of found myself in what I would say is a happy middle, where I'm playing a sheepskin bag, one of those Lee bags with the zipper so that I can play some tubes to the drones. And what I like about that is I get kind of more moisture going to the channel early on. And I still have the peace of mind that my drones aren't going to get wet. As far as the drone reads, I mean, so much of it depends on what sound you like, what your drones are. To a degree, I would say what you play is immaterial. There's so many good products out there. But when you find something you love, you become pretty loyal to that. And so for me, what I've got for my drones, they're an old set of lorries, about 100 years old. And then I've got a set of balance tone, the high resonance ones, and the reeds that Bruce Hitchings makes, and love them in that set, And then the band, I've got a various sets that I might play in the band, depending if I have worries of ivory or not. But anyway, old Hendersons, or got some really good Athertons that I play in the band as well. And I'm just playing the same drum reeds there as well. I like them in the sheepskin. I like them in the tubes. Just sort of my go-to. As far as chainer reeds go, I'm most often playing a Chesney, sometimes a McPhee reed.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Jesse, you've got your hand up.
Yes, you mentioned practicing in the venue the day before. What are your strategies if it's an indoor competition and the venue is not open the day before, particularly if the hotel is not necessarily practice friendly?
Yeah, I mean, then I wouldn't stress about it, right? If your bagpipe's good at home, it's not going to be like horrible anywhere. But if for me, I've got this kind of elevation factor maybe to think about. So I would just try to have a tune in a parking lot in midday if it's warm enough or something. If I can't get in the environment, like if it's cold outside and I can't play in my hotel room or something, I just won't, and it'll be okay. I'll have enough time. Maybe I'll give myself a little more time in the tuning room on the day to make sure that I have a good sound. But I won't stress too much about it. But it's really nice peace of mind if I can play at least in a similar environment, similar like cross town, whatever. But if I can play in my hotel room for even 5 minutes or something, or if I can play in the parking lot, that is just one less thing you have to think about on the day. These are sort of best case scenarios. You don't always get to do that, and just deal with it. Know that your bagpipe can still be wrangled on the day just fine.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, hearing none, seeing none. I'll just say that Nick is actually going to be putting on a seminar in person at our day of piping on March 9th. And he's also, March 29th. And he's also going to be putting on a recital that day also. So we'll have the amateur competitions, grades 1 through 5. This year it'll be light music and Pembroke. And Nick will be putting on a seminar as well as putting on a recital. Our next education series Zoom will be on March 18th. And that will be Bob Worrell talking about how you can improve your ensemble and your band. So make sure and tell your pipe majors and drummers about that one. That should be another good one. So that's our upcoming events. May 3rd is the Ian Swinton Open, where we're going to have some world-class piping. You won't see any better piping event anywhere in the world than right there that day. And that is May 3rd. So that's our upcoming events. So we hope to see you all there. If you want to play at any of those events, especially the McHugh, the amateur contest, entries are now open. So get your entries in. We would appreciate it. Nick, can't thank you enough for doing this for us. I really appreciate it. And I hope it's a little warmer down there in Houston where you're at.
It's about to get cold. I think it's dipping below freezing, which is,
Below
things
freezing.
shut
Well,
down.
we talk below zero
Down
up
here.
here, not below freezing.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks, Jim, for making it happen.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you all for attending. See you next month.
Thank
See
you
ya.
very much.